Hey everybody, it's Irene with BrainStormAcres, and this morning I'm in the greenhouse. I try and get into the greenhouse, well, I'm in every day, multiple times a day, but I try to get in at least once a week where I do some serious cleanup. And one of the things that I've mentioned a couple of times in the past is that we were debating what to do with our pepper plants. Now, I harvested the last of the peppers probably, oh geez, a week ago? Yeah, probably about a week ago. And we've been debating, do we ditch them? Do we keep them? What do we do? Now, why would you keep peppers? Well, both peppers and tomatoes are actually perennials, not annuals. But in most places in the United States, we grow both of those as annuals. That means at the end of the growing season, we toss them out with the trash. This year, I was growing a couple of different kinds, several kinds of peppers. I have a Godfather in this bucket here. There's a Godfather, which is a roasting pepper, Mamma Mia Rosso, which is definitely an Italian roasting pepper, and the Sandia, which is a type of New Mexico chili. We had more problems than usual starting peppers this year. Peppers are slow to germinate. This year was just a bit wacky, and we don't want too many peppers. We're not huge pepper eaters. So we debated what we would do this fall because I wound up with like 3 times as many peppers as I wanted this summer. And the reason that happened was the fact that I tried to start peppers, they didn't start, and after a certain point I said, well, I can't wait anymore, I need to start some other ones. And of course, about a week after that, everything popped up. And I have no idea what stalled everything. It was just one of those random things that happened. So we have decided we're going to try to overwinter some of our peppers this year. Now, peppers and tomatoes are both like tropical sort of plants. So they don't like freezing weather. And about probably a week and a half ago, when I had harvested the last of the Mamma Mia Rosso, I just literally chopped the plant off because back then we were thinking about tossing this whole thing. Well, since then, I don't know if you can see it or not, but since then, this little guy has put on new leaves. I'm like, okay. I've, over the years, have debated the whole process of overwintering peppers. I know of several people who do it. I've been debating whether it was worth the effort. When we have a normal winter, we spend a fair amount of time down in the single digits, might be maybe 5 Fahrenheit. And it's not uncommon for at least a couple of times during the winter to get down to maybe -5 Fahrenheit. So it's cold, really cold. And when it gets that cold, we let this greenhouse drop down. Everything in this greenhouse, in the way of brassicas, can pretty much tolerate 20 degrees, no problem, in terms of temperature. We have had it go lower than that and have had both the lettuce and the brassicas survive. I don't like to let it go that low, but if I run out of propane or something, there's not much I can do about it. Propane is ridiculously expensive this year. We're kind of doing a balancing act between what's worth it and what's not. We have not yet gotten rid of our tomatoes because they're still producing. But our current plan is, as the number of tomatoes diminish on some of the plants, we will probably eliminate some of the plants. For instance, I harvested everything on the Wisconsin. So I want to get that plant out of the lineup of hydroponics. And I can do that easily enough by simply shifting stuff around. Our goal long term is to actually reduce the number of things on the hydroponic table so that there's nothing there that's not producing anymore. And yeah, eventually they'll all go away. I assume it will get cold enough that we won't be able to hold them anymore. So since we don't really have total control of temperature in here, and it's only worth so much to us to try to control the temperature, what we can do is, if it's going to be really cold, small buckets like this can go into the utility building, because the utility building is not allowed to go below 32 degrees. So what do we need to do? We just need to trim them back. Now, I'm not going to trim them back as hard as I trim back this little Mamma Mia Rosso, but I am going to take them back pretty far. And that's going to do a couple of things. I'm going to trim them above what I would call a growth point. If you look at this thing here, these are where there were old branches and stuff like that. And if the plant is going to put out new growth, it will put it out on those spots. It will only push out someplace else if it has no option. So all I'm going to do on a couple of these is take them down pretty hard. I've already taken this down a bunch. Some people say to leave leaves on. Other people say don't bother with the leaves. I don't know. I've never done this before. I trimmed everything, absolutely everything off that Mamma Mia Rosso, and it has come back from one of these little growth spur things. I am going to cut these back hard. I cut this the other day when I finished harvesting this one branch, and it's already put out a new shoot there. So what does getting rid of the branches do for you? Well, it reduces the amount of things that the plant is trying to keep alive, and it eliminates any kind of diseases that could be associated with those branches. So the advantages of taking everything off of this is now there's no bugs on that plant pretty much. Could there be something on the stem? Yeah, there could be, but it's less likely. I am going to simply trim these guys back. We're going to see what happens. The ones that matter the most to us are the Mamma Mia Rossos and the Godfathers. Having a couple of Sandias is fine, and I'm going to save those two, I think. I have gotten rid of my big pot of Sandias, and then I have another pot that has 2 Godfather peppers in it. Ideally, all the Godfather peppers will be in one pot. The reason the things were spread out the way they were is because the plants grew at very different rates, and it was very odd. So we wound up with plants that were all over the place in terms of sizes. And I didn't want to risk planting out plants that were too young. So I didn't. Well, that's fine, except that I wound up with kind of a mishmash of pots, which is kind of annoying in the long run. I debated trying to transplant the 2 in there into here, and I decided it just wouldn't work. So I'm going to wind up keeping 2 pots instead of 1. And like I say, we're going to leave them in here as long as we can. If we are going to get really, really ridiculously cold weather, and we're concerned about them being frozen in here, we will move them into the utility building. Now, the disadvantage in the utility building is I'm going to have to really make a note to self to go water them. With the lithium batteries, we don't need to do that. So although I do pop my head in periodically when Henry asks me to check what the battery level is, I'm not in there all the time. We're going to see what happens. Why would I decide to overwinter? Well, the big thing is Henry really loves the Mamma Mia Rossos and the Godfathers. Really loves them. And we had a hard time getting seeds for Godfathers last year. It is a Burpees exclusive. Burpees was not selling any Godfather seeds last year. The only way you could get Godfather was as a seedling, and I don't like dealing with seedlings coming into Arizona. We have very strict agricultural rules about imports. That means your veggies can get stalled in the equivalent of, bureaucratic at the border. And sometimes by the time you get them, they're in pretty bad shape. And it has nothing to do with the shipper. The shipper may have shipped in a timely fashion, but if it stalls at the border here, your stuff could die. So we're going to try it just to see what happens. It may not work, because historically they tell you that there's a percentage that won't make it. And I totally understand that. I mean, you're cutting the heck out of the guys, and then you're asking them to come back later and produce for you. Okay, well, maybe it works, maybe it doesn't. But we're going to try cutting them back and seeing if it does any good. If it works, it means that we will have eliminated the drama of trying to grow peppers in the spring at the same time as we're trying to grow tomatoes and everything else. And eliminating drama is never a bad idea. If it doesn't work, I do have more seeds for all of these. If they make it, cool. If they don't, oh well. It's just an experiment. But I figured while I was in here cleaning up today, because I'm going to clear out one pot of herbs that are definitely past their best of use by date. It's tarragon and basil in that one particular pot, and neither of them are producing quality stuff anymore. I've got quite a lot of tarragon already dried, so I'm pretty comfortable with that. The basil, I would have liked more, but the quality basil in that pot is not good. I have one more seedling in the seedling department over here that I'm going to pot up, and we're going to see if we can get any quality basil off of that. So that's all I'm doing. And I've watched it probably over the last 5 years, a dozen different videos on how to overwinter your peppers. Now my poor little peppers are naked, and we're just going to leave them and see what happens. I can see that there's already, like on this one, it's already got some baby leaves coming out. I think it's an interesting thought. In case you have any doubts about my brain on this one, and the fact that tomatoes are also perennials, if you ever want to have the experience of your life, go to Disney World in Florida, go to the Epcot Center there, and take a look at their tomato trees. They have tomato trees that have been growing for years, and it comes up over the top of this big trellis, and the tomatoes hang down, and they use those tomatoes in the restaurants there. And they actually have the statistics on how many pounds of tomatoes this thing produces, and it's pretty amazing. But these are tomato trees, and they are so humongous, so humongous. You know, usually what gets our tomatoes by the end of the season here is vermin, various types of bugs and diseases and stuff like that. Obviously, in a controlled indoor environment of a greenhouse, you have the ability, if you're willing to pay attention, to pretty much control things. There are some diseases that once your plant's got it, you're probably not going to make it. But there's lots of other things that can be controlled, and apparently that's what they've been doing there for a long time, because we've been going to Epcot a very long time. They're getting ready to celebrate 50th anniversary this year. We had been there multiple times before their 25th anniversary. And I do remember their 25th anniversary. I probably have a keychain or something to celebrate that. So, yeah, they had tomato trees back then too. I don't know if it's the same tomato tree, but I'll tell you what, it's pretty impressive. I'm winging it. I hope you enjoyed this. Be sure to like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell. And remember that it's okay to wing it in the garden. I mean, I did my homework first. I read about stuff. I watched some other people's videos. I had just rewatched a video 3 weeks ago, I guess. And I planned to do this earlier, but then we hadn't made any final decisions. So, yeah. And then another friend of ours did a video on his about the same topic. And I'm like, yeah, we had already decided we were going to do this. We just hadn't gotten around to trimming it. A lot of times these odd projects like this get put off until like the weekend. And then I wind up scrambling around on the weekend. And that's what I'm doing. So until next time, bye.